It's coming for you, and you can't do anything about it. Hi there, I'm Greg Vinning, and welcome to this episode of the Questing Chiropractor podcast. And today, we're talking about uncertainty, chaos, disruption. And this is a disrupted episode because Nimrod Mueller takes over, and we're going to be talking about revealing the power of adaptability and curiosity so we can get our way through those moments where practice doesn't go the way we want it to. Get ready to be inspired as we delve into the heart of chiropractic growth and transformation, navigating the challenges and opportunities that come with these unexpected changes. This episode is a must listen for every chiropractor seeking to thrive amidst chaos and the evolution of the profession. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractor podcast. We help you grow as visionary, vital, and capable chiropractors who are always on. We do things differently as we help to elegantly awaken your innate wisdom within. We help you create robust, predictable, and trustworthy practices that serve oceans of people and yet still have free time for yourselves and your families. We use neuroscience to deliver better business results so that you can get greater, deeper, and more effective impact in more ways. We are Questing Chiropractors, and this is our story. And welcome back to the Questing Chiropractor. So this is Greg Vinning speaking. You know me, and Nimrod is joining us today, and we're doing a really interesting episode today where I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. Nimrod's going to lead us, and I'm very excited to find out where that goes because I love it when Nimrod leads conversations. They always go somewhere fruitful. So first of all, hello, Nimrod.
Hello, Greg, and all listeners. It's fantastic to be back on here and to play in this space with you.
Yeah, beautiful. So where are we starting today?
Well, I want to see what it's like for you to throw yourself in the deep end because I gave you absolutely no warning about what we're talking about. And I thought that we would have a look at a really interesting topic that's come up with a few clients and is quite timely also. We're coming up to the end of the year now, into the new year. A lot of change, a lot of transformation. Can you think of a time when you've walked into practice and something's gone, oh, and you've had to really jump to something in a different way, in a different energy, in a different mode?
Yeah, definitely. Where either the rug's been pulled out from under you in a way that's not so good, or something surprising and potentially positive has happened, but also unplanned and creates a bit of chaos. Yep.
Chaos is such a great word. I want to double click on that one. What do you do? What's your process in that moment?
So at the moment, my process is if I feel myself putting up any resistance, I lead with curiosity and go towards fascination. And the reason why I say currently, because that hasn't always been my process. Until maybe the last few years, my process would have been resistance to try and resist the reality. I don't want it to be that way. It's not the route I had planned for this day or this shift or this life or whatever it is. And I would do a really good job at trying to resist reality. And over the years, I've just realized that's not a good strategy. Far more useful strategy is to lean in with some curiosity. And then I find the natural output of that is for me to see this as some kind of opportunity. But I don't find that my natural easy place to go. So curiosity feels easy. And then curiosity leads to the idea of investigating this as an opportunity.
Yeah, beautiful. And so you mentioned, you've really ticked all the words that are important in this field. But you mentioned resistance. How does that feel for you?
I generally feel that in my arms and in my chest, and it feels like I'm literally trying to push something away, and I'm trying to keep myself safe behind a wall while the chaos in front of the wall, and I'm creating a barrier between me and whatever that environment is that I feel uncomfortable in.
Right. And then how do you change your energy or your resourcefulness to move into that state of wonder and curiosity and fascination? Have you got a procedure for that?
I've got a couple of different ways, and if one doesn't work, I can go to another one. And I've really intentionally worked at trying to have fail safes in this. I've taken a couple of lessons from chatting to and watching documentaries and interviews with high level performing sports people. and how they have ways of getting into flow. And if they get knocked out or if they can't get in for whatever's happening, they've developed different ways of getting towards that same flow state. So for me, the first one is can be just curiosity, using a mental cue that then changes the kinesthetic reaction and softens me into leaning into the space and stepping into that then chaos, which so often doesn't end up being nearly as bad as you had thought it was going to be behind that wall of resistance. If I find I'm still not getting there, then I breathe into the space, and it's very much a kinesthetic anchoring of breathing in and trying to soften the wall of what I feel in my chest and my arms, and that softening. If that doesn't work, movement. I will literally try and take myself to another space, do some deep breathing, move myself, and then come back into the space, and then notice that my physiology has changed, my psychology, and I can move into the whatever needs to be handled.
Yeah. I think you've jumped over some key steps that you probably have really easily embodied. One of them is retreating to a place of safety and security. So going, whoa, hold on, this isn't normal. I'm not feeling safe and secure. What do I need to do within myself? And you mentioned breathing, you mentioned the tension, and we automatically at some point allow ourselves to go, I need to calm myself down to allow that space to change, to allow that state to change, actually. And I think it's such an important thing that we need to observe ourselves, or we would love to observe ourselves. It's probably more a need to when these things happen.
You function from need at that level.
It's a low vibration. And, if we map this across the innate quadrants, it's a hindbrain thing, isn't it? It's a safety survival thing.
We're looking for some solid ground on which to plant our feet. And if we're not feeling that solid ground, then taking a step back to find that solid ground is necessary.
So first observe yourself having lost your sure footing. And then have a way to come back to it. And, it's kind of like I had someone in practice this week doing a re-exam with them, a progress exam. And we talked about bringing up more resourcefulness within their life, because she's had a horrible lot of things going on, events in her life. And she said, well, when I feel super stressed, I just remember to breathe and to meditate. And I'm like, great, but this is something we need to practice out of that time. Right. So we need to dig into that.
I got such a great lesson from that once when we're talking about going into meditation, and the frame got given to me that meditation can be fantastic. But like you said there, if you need to retreat into meditation every time there's a challenge, you're not carrying the lesson or the embodiment from the meditation into daily life. And the message that I got that once was, it's good going up onto the mountain, but you go up onto the mountain to come back down again. And you need to bring an element of that journey from that mountain back to real life. You can't always retreat up to the mountain sanctuary at every challenge. So you have to bring an element, or not you have to, it's useful to bring an element of the mountain down to everyday life.
Yeah. And I'm sure these high-level athletes, all performers within business or whatever they are, artists, they practice that, right? They practice when there's downtime.
I find the ones that I really got some keen insight from were the ones who had to work at it. And sometimes when an athlete, let's take athletes as an example, when they're young, they find they don't need to work on it that much. Maybe the stakes aren't as high, there aren't as many risks, they don't have that much livelihood going on, maybe the competitions aren't as big. As life gets more complex as you get older, or we perceive it to get more complex as we get older, and there's more at stake, my learnings from them were that the ones who performed at a high level for the longest developed what I called athletic maturity. And there was a part of how they handled their bodies that was a big part of that, the physiology, and then there was the part of the psychological performance where they developed some of these processes.
Yeah. And this is probably more psychological, what we're talking about.
Yes,
it's
today
a
it is.
state, it's a way of being. It's just curious you say that, because I would have thought that in the amateur level, the pool is so big that to stand out, you really have to work hard, right? And we see that with chiropractors, right? If you're in a town where there's a lot of chiropractors, then the way, or other competitors in the health field or out of the health field, you need to work to stand out.
I think the distinction there from what I've learned is that there's less to, that they've got less to fail with. So if they're at amateur level, You haven't yet achieved a high level that you could fall from. So while their future is at risk, that's all quite conceptual. Where when you have a career, when you're in a championship final, when you've got a work of body behind you, think of somebody who's published maybe a best-selling book. The second time they go out, the pressure is much higher. Like the curse for the musician is the curse of the second album, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Interesting. So bring it back to topic. I want to talk about change, and that you talked about resistance, resilience, adaptability. At this time of the year, we've come to the end of the year and coming into the new year. So many people are telling me, the questers that I'm chatting with, that, maybe the day isn't as busy as they thought, or maybe a lot of people have dropped off, or they got too busy in their own life to be able to stick with their schedule. And there's this frustration that comes up within the questers that we're coaching, that they can't be as busy as they want to be, as they need to be, this really low vibrational stuff. And it's about how we transform and change and adapt with resilience and fragility through these, changes that happen in our practice, where we walk in the door and it's not what we expected.
Yeah, it is a challenge.
Yeah. So I thought, looking at this, it's quite interesting, because when we look at what that requires of us, it really requires us to go through that innate model sort of brain flow and end up sitting back, observing and asking those big questions, those prefrontal cortex questions of what would I be able to do in this situation? How would I be able to make the best of this situation? What could I learn? I wonder what this could bring to me. And that's where we find that meaning, that fulfillment, that delight that happens even in those moments where the agenda is suddenly the schedule is suddenly at 50%.
Yeah, so let's use that exact example. And the way where I would go with that is maybe feel the resistance of your book emptying out. You arrive fresh and you're there, and suddenly the phone starts ringing and people are dropping out of the book. The opportunity in that is to focus on the people that still are in the book, and to do gratitude for them. And if I've got 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, if that suddenly frees up, I could go through their names and their files and reacquaint myself with those beautiful people that come in and choose our service, and do gratitude for them, and even gratitude for the people who've moved out the book on that day. And my experience is that when you do that, you're not only then much more present for those people who are in, you're much more attractive for the people you're with, which is our quadrant 1 perspective, but you've then brought on your quadrant 2 perspective, because so many times I'll look back through their history and go, I forgot about this about them. I forgot about that about them. Wow, their x-ray is different to what I thought it was going to be, because it's maybe been a couple of months since I've looked at it. And suddenly you bring up a new conversation with them. And so that person who is there, you've done gratitude for, not only is there that energetic reconnection, but in terms of a critical analysis of looking how they're progressing through their care, how you're handling their care on a detailed orientation, a new insight comes through, and then sharing that with them creates a new level of connection, which allows you to take the idea of what they're doing under care to a much bigger space. So that's moving through those 4 quadrants simply from leaning into gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is absolutely my number 1 tip. Be grateful for the person who's in front of you right now. Because if nothing else, if you're not grateful to them, they're going to feel it.
If your resentment of everything else, if you're doing that resistance, resentment, you might not be doing it at them, but you're doing it in their presence, and they will think it's about them. How could we not?
They feel that energy. Feel that energy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, when we look at the 4 quadrants through this change and transformation, quadrant 1 is really, it's this big abstract stuff. It's about how can I evolve in this space? What can I do to develop, or what would I be able to do to develop in this moment? What would be able to unfold in front of me right now? It's these big questions that just really lead us, as you said, towards that place of curiosity and fascination that just opens up that moment and deepens it as well. And it's really useful for us to start there.
Hugely. And there's a beautiful process of trying to envision what that full book would look like in the future. I'm not saying I want it to be full now. What would it look like? It's accepting what there is. It's the surrender to the moment. We can do gratitude for the people. And then if you have some time to spare, is imagining the book being full and imagining your office being full, and imagine hearing the laughter and the chatter and people being sent through from the front desk and back, and imagine that perfect adjustment during the shift. And then imagine that over and over and embody how that would be. And that is just cueing your psychology up to create that as a future probability.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you did that. You just moved us really beautifully from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2. And it's not only about the psychology, it's also about training those psychomotor skills. You brought up athletes and we talked about musicians. There's been many studies that have shown that the mental exercise of practice by itself without the physical embodiment actually increases our level of progressing our efficiency. And that's what
absolutely.
Growth and transformation is in the second quadrant. It's about progressing efficiency. How can I really improve my level of efficiency to be able to grow and transform as more people come in and I serve them more deeply? And what you brought up, I love that about the case files, about the people. It's really about stepping into their shoes and seeing what is the world like from their perspective, understanding their physiology, their neurology, their way of being, their perspective, their values are deeper so that I can serve them in a more transformational way.
Yeah, I was recently watching a documentary and it was Serena Williams' tennis coach. And he was really talking about just ingraining these processes, these psychomotor skills into, and he even used the term, into your basal ganglia. Just get it so deeply ingrained into your neurology. So the classic example of is if with Serena Williams was going to be serving for the match in Wimbledon in the final, and she wants to try and do something innovative, she's not going to do anything new that she's never done before. She's going to have practiced whatever she's about to do 1,000 times off the court. So it's ingrained in her basal ganglia. So at that moment of pressure and tension, it's not her frontal cortex that needs to fine tune her footwork. It's all ingrained in that body and embodied. And that's really that quadrant 2 aspect of time and repetition and bringing things into those areas. So it is a sure-footed place to act from.
Yeah. And, again, you're leading us through the quadrant. So we're just in quadrant 3 now, right? And we're putting it into practice, when we're on the court, when we're busy or when we're not busy, all those things that have to happen that we've practiced 1,000 times off the court. So we've gone from that evolution development unfolding into this progressing our efficiency. And now it's into how can I modify my level of effectiveness? How can I be deeply transformationally effective with the person in front of me or the team or, the procedures or whatever it is? So this is the way that growth and transformation flows through the quadrants. We're now at that Wimbledon stage where we've done the work and we're now looking at that effectiveness that is really continuously modified, continuously upgraded and grown and transformed. That change that happens.
It's that place of where we get to the coalface and we can actually now deliver. And when we're at the coalface, we now have the ability to be adaptable for whatever presents in front of us.
Yep. And the interesting thing about this is that adaptability, as you said, relies on what sits in our basal ganglia. So we're not actually creating it in the moment. We're pulling it out so that we can apply it intelligently to the situation in front of us.
And that's the idea of flow, and where you feel like it's coming through me but from me. When you move your hand in the adjustment in just this way and you get this beautiful release, or a question comes to mind, or you unlock something within that person in your table talk and you have no idea where that came from. And the amateur thinks, oh, just because I'm talented and I can pull it out whenever I want. The professional knows it's because I grafted so hard for such a long time and I put in the time and repetition that I can get this and I can access the states where this can come through me, not from me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that modification of effectiveness that happens through flow is a hindbrain function, not a forebrain function, right? And forebrain is where we're thinking and observing ourselves and critiquing ourselves also in that, can I do it better? let that go. And it comes back to that gratitude with the person in front of you. Just let that chatter go, be there, right there, and be as effective and transformational as possible.
Yeah, the grandfather of the idea of flow is Hungarian researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he talks about structuring your flow, and within what we do with our questers, where we're helping people to create structure so you can find the freedom to be in flow, is something that I know I resisted for such a long time. The idea of creating structure around me. No, I don't need structure. I can just do what I wanted to. And then over time, with the idea of athletic maturity, just like these athletes will, they realize that structure and flow and procedures really help. And that's really where something like superstition comes from. I did this before and I got this result, so I'm going to do this again and get this result. As a short segue from the sports world, there's a cricketer in South Africa who was actually a rugby coach of mine as well. His name was Neil Mackenzie, and he changed from one team to another team. And when he went out to bat in his debut game for this other team, his teammates had played a practical joke on him and taped his bat to the ceiling. So he got this rush of energy getting his bat down. He went out and he scored 100. So in cricket, that's really good. Scored a century. So for the next few matches, he taped his own bat to the ceiling. So that's a bit of an extreme of trying to structure your flow.
Yeah.
But the lesson is very sound. And only when we've gone through structuring your flow based on a quadrant 1 perspective of what we would like to accomplish, we create a structure based on that desired outcome, we can flow. And like you say, that's where we can suspend our self observation and be in that flow state and let go of that sense of self and just be in what comes through in that moment.
Yeah. And there is a moment to observe ourselves and to critique in a constructive way. And that's the quadrant 4 function, right? That's the revision, the reconstruction, the way, how am I going to advance myself? How can I be more efficient, be more effective, serve more people, make a greater change, have more impact? There is definitely a place for that. And it's not necessarily while we're in that flow, but it does serve an important purpose.
Absolutely. I would say that in the moment, it would almost be the antithesis of flow, and it would really jar you out of that flow state. And once, if we keep coming back to a sports analogy, since I keep leading us there, once the game's done, a post-game analysis is useful.
Absolutely.
Whether you've quote unquote won or quote unquote lost, if it's gone positively or not gone as positively, a post-game analysis is really, really, really important. And it's one of my favorite places to play. I record visit ones at least once a month so I can listen to myself doing it. I record myself doing adjustments. Looking back on your stats is a great way to do that as well, looking at it and going, what's worked, what hasn't. And sometimes it's just looking at if somebody is still under care with you after a period of time, reviewing, what have we done well that this person is attracted to our care for? Or if somebody's drifted out of your care, and whether they give you feedback or not, what do you think we could have done better? What do you think didn't go well that we didn't meet this person's needs in a way that they would have chosen chiropractic care with us?
Yeah, amazing. One little word of caution I would give here is when we say well, it's not necessarily about those material things that we can gain. It's got to be about being aligned with your purpose as a chiropractor. How did I help this person move forwards, evolve and develop and transform in line with what I would love to create as a chiropractor?
Yeah, it's all in alignment with your vision, your purpose, your mission. That's how you're defining well versus not well, optimal versus suboptimal.
Yeah. Yep. So I think, this process of transformation and change that is useful for us to dip into when things happen in practice, that we didn't necessarily expect, because we're all going to have those days, those weeks, it's going to come and keep coming to keep challenging us to grow and to transform, right? To be able to make these positive changes. They start with that quadrant 1-ness, that unfolding that can happen in front of us, that evolution that happens so beautifully, and then move that into that quadrant 2 of how can I progress my level of efficiency, and then enter that state of flow of how can I actually modify my effectiveness. And then that quadrant 4 of revising, of reconstructing, of advancing myself. And as we cycle through that, we get that process of growth and transformation naturally as a byproduct of that.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see it happen just time and time again. That neurologically driven flow is so dependable, really. And it's something that over the years of working with the innate model, I've found amazingly, safety is the wrong word here, because safety has limits to it. It kind of keeps us down when we get there. But I found it so dependable to be able to expand my awareness of what's possible, what's probable, how to modify around it, and how to expand into it. It's so many different situations. And by keeping coming back to that, it really makes it easy to embody it. And it really has made it easy over the years to become much more adaptable. And for me, when we do adaptability at a high level, when we get into that flow, then we get into generativity. Now we're actually in the state of creator. And in a state of creator, it's the antithesis to a state of victim. So if something doesn't go the way you expected as victim, we do woe is me and we shrink. But in the state of creator, we say, how can we make this on the way and not in the way? And an embodied knowledge and knowingness of the innate model and how it flows through the neurologically driven flow has just been so essential and key to that for me.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. You know, I wanted to delve into how that can create a different energy state for us, because we are beautifully in line with our purpose rather than really victimized, as you said, and incongruent, which causes this state of low vibration destruction and contradiction that happens in through there. And you mentioned some of that. We haven't had time to get into what happens if we don't see these opportunities for growth and transformation, but actually see them as victimized, poor me, you know, all of those sorts of low vibration states. And it's important to realize when I sense that, I actually have an opportunity to grow and to transform. So it's not that poor me is bad in itself. It's staying stuck in that state.
Yeah, it's a message. It's just like having a symptom in the body. Is for one of our practice members, we would suggest to people, what do you think the message is? What's your body trying to tell you? And our mental and emotional states and responses are not very much different from a physical symptom coming through there.
Yep. The universe trying to keep us on purpose.
Yep. Spot on. Yep. Always trying to bring us back to purpose and back to alignment.
Yep. Yeah. So the invitation for questers and all those listening is there's going to be chaos in practice. And when we lean into it beautifully with curiosity and wonder and flow through those quadrants with it, we actually end up with growth, transformation, and a higher energy state, which itself flows back into attractiveness.
Yeah, thank you, Nimrod. And for any of the listeners who've been listening to this, if you found this useful at all, I bet you one of your friends or colleagues will find this useful as well. Please consider sharing this with them. Please consider sharing your insights on this. And we'd love to hear from you. Look in the comments below if you found this on YouTube and get hold of us. So thank you very much, Nimrod. Thank you for leading the session, and we'll be back with all the questers next time.
Thanks, Greg.